Good afternoon, my friends. For whatever reason, every time I try to share my slides with you, they've not been working for the last 2 months. But anyway, my name is Chris Erickson, and I am the managing director of the Elders Project, and it is my privilege and delight to welcome you today to this month's series. Our project brings to you the voices of leaders who have spent their careers pioneering the work of connection with others to health. Through the Elders Project, we bring these visionaries to you to share and preserve their experiences, knowledge, and wisdom to increase the likely success of clients and the systems that serve them. Our host, if you've not been with us before, our host is Jim Clarkson, who is the chairperson of the Via Positiva family of companies. He serves on numerous boards and in advisory roles to the nation's leading healthcare providers, and previously served as a national vice president with Value Options. With Value Options, Jim was responsible for enterprises in emerging market areas, managed state substance abuse delivery systems, and served as an internal and external substance use disorder subject matter expert. Previously, Jim both led behavioral health and substance use disorder treatment provider agencies and worked as a clinician for many years. He provided consultation and training nationally and internationally, including for the United States Department of Health and Human Services, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, the Health Resources and Services Administration, and the Network for the Improvement of Addiction Treatment. Jim has worked and consulted with programs across the country focusing on the connection between spirituality and wellness, mental health, addiction recovery, and financial literacy. He managed the Healing Circle at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe and has worked with pueblos and tribes around the country. For more than 40 years, Jim has helped Fortune 500 companies and public healthcare systems create environments for recovery, sustainability, and positive therapeutic outcomes. Our distinguished elder today is Mr. Leonard Kincaid. Leonard is the co-founder and CEO of the Houston Recovery Center. The Houston Recovery Center was established by the city of Houston as an innovative solution to the costly problem of public intoxication. Prior to the Houston Recovery Center, Leonard spent 23 years at the Council on Recovery in both clinical work and program administration. He worked in a variety of leadership roles, including Director of Operations, Deputy Director, Executive Vice President, Chief Operations Officer, and Chief Government Relations Officer. His experience in the field of addiction and mental health spans over 30 years. Leonard has a successful history of promoting positive social change by developing and working with community-based initiatives. Most recently, he developed Houston Recovery Initiative, a recovery-oriented system of care coalition. Its objective is to increase resources needed to support people with substance use disorder. Leonard also co-founded and chaired the Coalition for Substance Abuse Services, representing 60 treatment and recovery service providers in Houston. Leonard was educated in Texas and Mississippi. He holds an MBA, a master's in counseling, is a licensed professional counselor, a licensed chemical dependency counselor, and is a graduate of the American Leadership Forum. I am so pleased to have these gentlemen here with you today. I would ask you to please stay on mute during this presentation. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat at any time, and we will take your questions at the end of this dialogue. And so, Jim, on that point, I am turning this to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. It's delightful to be here with everyone. Pleasure that you all have joined us this afternoon, this morning, or depending upon where you're at. I'm in sort of beautiful Houston, Texas, downtown. It's hot and rainy over here as per the usual in the summer, and we're just delighted to have you all join us and to get to talk to our elder for this month, a good friend, someone who I deeply admire, Leonard Kincaid. And one of the reasons that we do the Elders Project is in many cultures across the world, as many of you are familiar, elders are really seen as in many cases, sources of wisdom, sources of guidance, the ability to share life experiences that would be meaningful to those who are coming up or younger or other generations. And when I worked in New Mexico, one of the things that we had to do was provide behavioral health services for the pueblos and tribes around New Mexico. And in order to do that, one of the very first things we did was we invited a group of elders from the pueblos and tribes there, and they joined us. And I'll never forget a group of about 25 elders. So lots of beautiful, colorful dresses and squash blossom necklaces, and everybody coming into this beautiful room and sitting in a circle. And I had the opportunity to lead a discussion among the elders. And one of the things that really struck me was there was an element in the room that you could feel of absolute uh, beauty and positivity and grace. And in the discussion, there were not a lot of words from these elders, but the words that came had incredible impact. And one of the things that I noticed in this group of absolutely beautiful, genuine elders was the common message, and I've heard this in cultures around the world since then, but the common message is we have difficult challenges to face today, but the common message that you could feel in the felt sense of the air and the energy was that everything is going to be okay. Everything is okay right now, despite evidence that we might see or feel to the contrary. The messages of elders around the world has been everything is okay. And that's a worthy message for those coming up behind us in the work that we do, as well as our colleagues and peers. So there's challenges to address in the physical world, and in the big picture, everything is really okay. The second thing I want to share is I grew up in Houston, and I plotted my whole childhood how to get out of Texas. That was my goal from as long back as I can remember, and was successful in that, and went to live in New Mexico, where I've lived for many, many, many years. And about 10 years ago, I came back and was going to an Astros ball game, and I was walking down the very streets that many of my clients and people who I'd interacted with lived, unfortunately. And it was a very tense, difficult, poverty-ridden, crime-ridden area. And when we were walking down the street, I was noticing, oh my gosh, there's something that's changed about this area. And I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was, but it felt safer. There were less people unhomed. There was just a general feeling of safety and some degree of compassion. And I later came to find out that Leonard Kincaid, our elder guest today, had been working on this with this population in this area for many, many years. And I was struck with the results that I later came to see were very supported by actual data, in addition to the felt sense that I experienced over, after being away for many years. So it's with absolute pleasure that I get to share and have a dialogue with Leonard. And Leonard, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for joining us. And I would just, start with our first question, which is you've done so much for our field in Houston and beyond. And I'd love to hear what you feel were your most important contributions or achievements in the work that you've done over many years. Bless you.
I would have to sneeze on my opening. Thank you, Jim. Always delightful to visit with you. I can think of three things that are all related, that one kind of produced the other. And one of the things that I'll say about the whole operation of the Houston Recovery Center is that its evolution has been really organic. And I think as I took you through the story, you can see how one thing led to another. But to answer your questions, one of the things that started this journey for me, especially this last journey with the introduction of the Houston Recovery Center, was that I first started the Houston Recovery Initiative. The Houston Recovery Initiative is a volunteer-driven organization that was started to operationalize a recovery-oriented systems of care in Houston. And so what that allowed us to do was to pull the entire community together, those individuals that are working in this space, and start a dialogue about what is that we can do collectively to get better outcomes for the population that we all are so invested in serving. And so because I had a long relationship with providers already, because I've always been a collaborator, and most of my work has relied on being in partnership with other people to be able to get the best results for the clients we serve, it was easy for me to pull a pretty significant group of people together and introduce this whole idea of recovery-oriented systems of care. And what that did was led to a collaboration that was quite successful. But one of the things that happened with one of the members in the group was that he got introduced to the whole idea of peer training. Back then, we call it recovery coach training. So he actually went to Hartford, Connecticut to get the training manual and certified as a trainer, and then brought that training back to Houston. And because we had set up the Houston Recovery Initiative, we had a community of people who was sensitive to the information that he was bringing back and saw the value in it. And so it allowed us to launch the training platform being led by Dylan West. He passed away 3 years ago now, but he introduced peer training to the city of Houston. We had so much success with launching that training that we got the attention of the state. The state got excited about what we were doing and asked Dylan plus 3 other people who were doing various versions of this training across the state, in Dallas, in El Paso, and in Austin, that they should all four come together, give the state their training manual. The state would blend it all together. And what came out of that was a certification program that led to recovery support specialist training that they get certified in. So that was a huge, huge step in really beginning to fill the void that we're losing with workers in this field because so many of us are aging out. And I'll probably say more about that later. But that also helped lay the foundation for me starting the Sovereign Center. The city of Houston approached me about launching this diversion program. And what I was able to do was launch the program in a really, really fast time frame. But I was able to do that because I could handpick my staff, and my staff is largely peers. And so because I participated in the development of the training program, and we had put all these people through the training program, we already knew the people that we wanted to staff the facility with. And I think I was the first facility in the city of Houston, not sure about the state of Texas, Dallas may have been before us, but in the city of Houston that actually put peers in positions that we were paying them for. Before we started this, there was no paid position for peers. When we first started training peers, we told them that there was no paid positions. And so if they thought they was leading, if the training would lead them to a job, and that was their priority, then they probably wanted to invest their time in something else because we were only training for volunteers at the time. But inside of 3 years, we were actually staffing people. And today, peers are everywhere. As a matter of fact, I can't even keep my good peers myself because people who can pay way more than I can afford to pay are recruiting them because they're placing them into all these other different settings, which is all good because it speaks well for the young peer profession. The other thing that I say that is one of, I think, my highest achievement is the introduction of a recovery care model that moves us beyond the episode of care tradition that is standard in our industry. And so what we've done is looked at how do we move past the episode of care model that we have now, which is supported by how people get reimbursed for their care also. But how do we move past that so that we can look at what do people really need to try and get their lives back under their control when they suffer from a chronic condition. And we know that the episode of care model simply does not work. And all you have to do is look at the stats to see that. And the stats is represented in the return to use for people who go through treatment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And so that says that there's something inefficient here in that model that is not meeting individuals' needs to the extent that's necessary to give them a chance to have long-term recovery. And so the model that we have developed does just that. The focus of the model is long-term recovery, not episodes of care. We're not really concerned about how many times you have to go through treatment. We're concerned about you staying engaged in a system that understands that relapse is a part of the discovery journey toward recovery, and that we are here to support you through that without any shame or blame, and staying with you to give you the time that you need and the support you need to be able to get your life under your control. I think that might have been a long answer for your question, Jim.
Not at all, Leonard. That was very interesting and very helpful. In fact, I'm going to follow up a little bit later with some questions about funding sources and relationship development and those sorts of things. But I want to just kind of shift gears a little bit. I've seen you develop relationships with the city, with the state, with your colleagues, with your staff, with your board, in a way that's just sort of beyond remarkable. You're just really an example of how to do relational business. And I guess the question I have is sort of within that, what does it mean to you to be an elder? What is that? What does that mean to you? How does that sit with you?
Well, the response that comes to mind most immediately is that I've got more time behind me than I do in front of me. And so, but there is an upside to that because it provides a level of clarity in terms of where I am now that allow me to give priority to what is important. And I am committed to getting as much out of this life experience as I possibly can. And so I'm at a point, though, that I know that I don't have any time to waste. And so what that does is it has a tendency to make me a lot more focused than I have been in the past because I can't afford wasted time. And so it makes me a little bit more, I think, direct, perhaps in some of my approaches. Because I know what's at stake and I know the value that the services that we render to the community provide both at the individual level and the community level. And so I'm pretty serious about the business at this point, and not to the point that I think I'm rooted in a way. I think I'm still plenty professional and engaging and what have you. But at this point, it seemed to be more important than it has been in the past.
Yeah, thank you, Leonard. I think at some point, this more superfluous things tend to fade away, and the things that have real value really come to the surface. And I feel some of that myself. It's like I have less tolerance within myself for things that are not really, really valuable, whether personally or professionally. So I really appreciate that. And I'll come back to that again as well. Could you tell us about your formative years and the influences that have shaped the person you've become personally and professionally? We'd love to hear some about your background and the influences that have helped make you the person you are today.
Sure. Well, I was born and raised in Mississippi, rural Mississippi, as a matter of fact, the central part of the state. And my core values was formed by my family and my community, of course. But one of the things that I learned from that was ingrained in me as a part of the core values is uh, work ethics, hard work, a, a appreciation for education. It was drilled in me at a very young age. Before, and I don't even know, and this is accredited to my mother. I have no idea um, where she got the idea from that education was so important, because neither she nor my father graduated high school. And so, but she always instilled in me that I would be going to college. And so, and this was from a very young age. And so nobody in my family had gone to college that I was aware of. And so it was something that was kind of foreign to me, although I grew to appreciate it as I grew, in school. And the other thing that was pretty, I think, significant in shaping the values that I landed on and that stuck with me was the many opportunities that I got to serve in leadership roles. That started happening to me very early in my developmental years as well. I think my first leadership role was given to me when I was in the ninth grade, when they asked me to be the president of the Future Farmers of America Club. Had no idea what being a president meant. But that started the journey. And then I was selected as president for my junior class, vice president for my, no, president for my freshman class, vice president for my junior class, and president for my senior class. And then I went to college, and that trend just kind of followed me. I was elected president of my majors club, founder and president of my graduate degree uh, uh, program. And then I was selected by the university to run a drug education and prevention program funded by the Department of Education my junior year. That that job allowed me to finish my undergraduate studies and go right into graduate school, where I finished my master's degree in counseling. And so that has continued into my professional job, where I have been given one leadership role after another that has led me to where I am today.
Thank you. Thank you, Leonard. If you could give your younger, fresh-faced self, like right out of college, some messages to help prepare them and support him, what would those things be? What messages would you give to your younger self as you embark on a career in behavioral health?
I think one of the smartest things that young people can do, and most of us don't realize this until we're well into our senior years, is to start by setting goals. Start by setting smart goals, because goals are good at giving you a direction. And it also helps you narrow your focus. Because if you set a goal, there are action steps that you have to take to be able to achieve that goal. So it lays out kind of an action plan for you without you kind of drifting all over the place to try and decide what it is you're trying to achieve. One of the old saying is, if you don't know where you're going, any road you take will get you there. And so the question is, what do you get to accomplish out of that wandering journey if you don't have any clear directions? So it is a huge, huge waste of time and energy if you don't have the ability to do that. The other thing that I would encourage young people to do is to be self-reflective or introspective. I think that being introspective is something that we don't learn until we're well into our maturing life. But the ability to look at yourself, the ability to have the courage to ask somebody to give you feedback about how you are showing up in their space, because we can see ourselves from in the mirror, but we seldom think about how do other people perceive us. And so having an appreciation for understanding how other people perceive us, I think is one of the most valuable contributions a young person can have made to them. And there was one other one in that same line of thinking that I wanted to share. Okay, the other one, yes, I thought about it, and you mentioned it earlier in Chris, I think mentioned it earlier, Jim, in your um, uh, list of areas of expertise that you have some mastery over, and that is financial literacy. I don't think there's anything that's more important for a young person to learn is how to manage their money. I'm afraid that we so often discover that very late in life, and by that time we have wasted a lot of time and a lot of money. And this is time and money that you cannot get back. So I think it should be a required um, uh, program in our academic settings, but unfortunately it's not. But I can't think of anything more valuable for a young person to understand, and that is financial literacy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leonard. Yeah, absolutely. So setting goals, introspection, and financial literacy, things that oftentimes are not taught, especially the financial literacy part in graduate school for therapists. And yet we know that money is representative of energy and of our intention and what our society and ourselves value. And the knowledge of how money moves in behavioral health is absolutely essential. Whether, I love that you are both a licensed, certified chemical.
It looks like Jim froze there for a minute. He's probably having some bandwidth issues in the hotel that he's in.
Leonard, it's Chris. I think he'll come back. I just had a moment of panic, as a host, to just go, where are my people? Because people froze, but Jim will come back to us. I know he will.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I'm not going to interrupt his question, and we're just going to wait for a minute and see if he can get back to us. And I'm like looking for him right now. And it often, in my experience, goes, oh, everybody else froze before you go, I think it was me. But he'll rejoin us, I'm sure.
Yeah, this is a common occurrence. It's like with bandwidth,
Yeah.
depending on what kind of reception you got, you can get
And
that kind of
depends on the weather. He said it was raining. It depends on the day. It depends on, it's Friday. Who knows?
Yes.
Who knows? But I know that he will rejoin us, and I don't want to interrupt his question because I don't know where he was going with it. But maybe I'll ask one in the interim while we wait for Jim to come back. Something you just said, Leonard, was the ability to be introspective. Here he comes. But the ability to be introspective as a human being, as a young learner, who do you ask for assistance on that?
Yes. One of the ways that you can ask for assistance is simply to ask somebody to share with you how they see you.
Okay.
And I know that people are accustomed to being comfortable doing that, but it's a great way for you to get an appreciation for how you're being perceived by others.
Do you believe that, Jim, I'm glad you're back. We'll get back to you in just a moment.
Okay.
Do you believe that when a young person asks something like that they get an honest answer, Leonard?
It's really hard to say. It
Okay.
depends on the relationship that you have with the person and whether or not they understand why you're asking the question in the first place. You know, if your motive is to, I want to be the very best person that I can possibly be, but I know that, I've got a blind spot, and that blind spot does not allow me to see myself the way other people see me. And so if you can get somebody that you trust enough, or that you trust enough to ask that question, and they care about you enough to answer that question, then they will do that. I know the first time I asked a group of friends a question like that, um, it was something that I was accustomed to doing, but they had not had that experience before. And we are adults. I mean, we're in like our 40s, and they admitted that they were just kind of blown away at the fact that I would even ask them that. And I think they was kind of uncomfortable responding to that question. But I explained to them why I asked the question in the first place. First of all, I trust you. I think you care about me. And so I'm asking you to tell me honestly how I appear and to you, so I can appreciate how I am seen by others, because I don't have that ability to see it myself. I just see what people give me back, but what they give me back may not be necessarily what they truly feel. It may be what they choose to share, because we all have personas. And so the question is, how close do we let people get to us, the real person? How protected do we wear our face behind our persona? And so that's kind of what the question began to get to. And I think young people get an appreciation for that early in their lives, give them a better chance to be a more rounded individual as they go forward in their lives.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much. Jim, welcome back. Sorry that you had a glitch. The question that I asked Leonard, because I didn't want to try and reframe yours because you were going someplace, but my question to Leonard was, how do you ask for real introspective help? Sorry, not help.
Sure. Thanks,
So
Chris.
that was that conversation. I'm giving this back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. Sorry, I got bumped off somehow. I just, was thinking and listening to Leonard there, was that how, for elders, authenticity and the ability to share our vulnerabilities with our staff members, with our colleagues, is really a beautiful way to be an elder. That vulnerability is part of what it means to be human, and authenticity, which is not easy, as all of you know who are leaders on this call, is also not easy. But those are ways to encourage introspection, and also to trust that we're all in a process together. So appreciated your answer there, Leonard, and thanks for the question, Chris. So now let's get to kind of the nuts and bolts here a little bit more. Leonard, under your leadership and partnership, Houston has really, really made substantive progress in serving people with SUD. It's become sort of a model for different parts of the country coming to Houston to learn more about how to do that, reducing crime, helping those who are homeless. I would love, and I'm sure everybody would love, to hear your story and the keys that you can offer to those of us who are still, as are you, working on their issues in their own communities.
Thanks, Jim. So let me start by just saying that we were created by the city to serve as a diversion site for individuals arrested for public intoxication. When I started working on this in 2010, the city was arresting about 20,000 people a year for public intoxication. And so I introduced the idea of a diversion center, which I got from San Antonio. And what I witnessed in San Antonio was that when people were arrested for public intoxication, rather than going to jail, it was being taken to this facility. It was just a facility where they could sleep it off, and then be interviewed by individuals that was people with lived experience that could talk to them about how they got themselves in that situation in the first place, and then explain to them that this is not jail, that we only need you to stay with us until we're not concerned about your safety. The officer brought you to us because they were concerned about your safety, and as soon as that's not a concern, you'll be free to go. And the other thing that was surprising to me is that the individuals did not receive a citation, so that did not have a court date, did not have a fine to pay, did not have anything going on their record. It was truly a free get out of jail card. And so because I'd been in the field for over 23 years at that time, uh, I was just kind of blown away with the simplicity of it, and yet the impact that it could have on a community, a very large community, law enforcement and the jail and the individual that was in that situation. And so I brought the idea back to Houston and talked to everybody I could get in front of about let's do this. Why can't we do this? And the timing must have been perfect because the stars aligned. I introduced the idea first to law enforcement people, and the first person that I talked to in law enforcement totally and completely got it. I didn't have to sell it. I just had to explain it. And then actually, he's my co-founder of the Sober Center because he was the one who did the heavy lifting from that point on. He introduced it to his chief, who introduced it to the city leadership, starting with the mayor pro tem, which is our current sheriff. But the mayor pro tem was a police officer before we got into politics. And so again, we were talking to somebody who knew what we were talking about, who knew the challenge that this population posed for law enforcement. So we didn't have to sell it. We just had to explain it. So he was able to get it in front of the mayor, who signed off on it immediately because they truly did want to reduce the population in the jail. As a matter of fact, they was under a mandate to reduce the population in the jail. And so they put it in front of the city council, and it was unanimously approved. And so we went from concept to operation inside of 3 years. So to bring it online, we actually tried to find an organization that would be willing to take it on as a project. No organization would do it, including the organization that I worked for at that time. They thought it was a bit of a mission creep. And so what they had to do was create an organization, which is what the Houston Recovery Center is. This is the LGC, which is a local government corporation created by the city to run this particular service. And so then we had to find some place to actually put it. And the first problem we had to overcome was the NIMBY, not in my backyard mentality that communities have. And so we just got lucky because we were able to put it on the campus of a homeless shelter, the largest homeless shelter in the city, Soft Hope. We ended up leasing their warehouse and then renovating that warehouse and put 2 stories in it. Gave us the first floor for the Sober Center and the second floor for the mental health division, which is the group that Mike Lee, my co-founder, ran at that time. So we were neighbors. He was on the second floor, I was on the first floor. And there was no authority relationship between us, but we saw a lot of the same population because they ran the homeless outreach team as a part of the law enforcement division that he was over. And so we just made for good partners. And what the city, when they created us, asked us to do is to divert individuals from jail first, reduce the jail population, preserve law enforcement resources, preserve medical resources, and provide those individuals with addiction issues a chance to find a pathway to recovery. And so what we discovered in a relatively short period of time was that 90% of the population coming through the Sober Center was individuals that we only saw once or twice. These were basically young professional people doing what young professional people do, consuming too much alcohol without having a sense of the consequences associated with it or safe drinking limits. And so they came to the attention of law enforcement and got brought to us rather than going to jail, which is what they were really pleased about. But that 10% of the population ended up making up about 38% of our total admissions. And so what we learned from that is that 10% was individuals that came through over and over and over again. And so what that indicated was that these individuals had a problem. And so what we set out to do, now that we understood that we was doing a good job of diverting these individuals, is understanding that 9% or that 10%. And so what we discovered was that the profile of that population looked like this. 100% of them had a substance use issue. Well over half of them had a mental health diagnosis. About 90% of them had a criminal background. About 97% of them was low income. About half of them was homeless, and about half of them was frequent users of the emergency room. So when you just look at those services and their frequency of use, you can understand that we are dealing with a pretty expensive population to taxpayers. And so what we set out to do was develop a program that targeted that population. And it really required that we rethought how services should be delivered, moving away from the episodic, disjointed system that presently exists that's based on episodes of care, with no serious care coordination associated with it, to a system mentality where we're thinking about, okay, how do we provide this individual's linkage to a continuum of care that provide the necessary resources that give them the better chance of having a successful outcome. And a successful outcome is able to get into and stay in recovery. And so we started with the acceptance of the fact that, and we like to call it a reality check, the fact that addiction is a chronic disease. And that, like all chronic diseases, there is no cure or no fix. There is the opportunity to manage it, but that takes real effort and oftentimes a long time to get to the point that you can do it successfully. We accept the fact that treatment is a necessary step on the journey to recovery, but it is just a step. Because the real work of treatment, for anybody who works in this field, starts post-treatment. And that recovery is achievable, but it is a lifelong journey. So we set out to set up a model with that in mind that would give these individuals a chance to do that. And then we start the foundation of our model with accepting the fact that it starts by being based on relationships of trust. And so it starts with the engagement. The first time we make connection with these individuals, we want to start with that in mind, that we are here to establish a trusted relationship with these individuals, because we know that it is trust that is the foundation for being able to influence them to take any kind of action that you introduce to them. And sometimes it takes a long time to gain that level of trust. And so that means that you have to be in front of these people over and over and over again before that began to yield fruit. But one of the things that's beautiful about a sobering center model is that law enforcement bring these people to you over and over again. And one of the things that we had a challenge doing was convincing law enforcement that we were perfectly okay with you bringing them to us over and over. Because law enforcement thought that we're bringing this person to you 10 or 15 times. That means that what you're doing isn't working. So we need to go to the game. We need to go to plan B, which is to put them in jail. And so the question to the law enforcement, well, how's that working for you? That's what you guys were doing before we got involved. And so, if you want to go back to that, what kind of return do you expect to get? It doesn't cost you anything to bring them to us. What we're telling you is that every time you put them in front of us, it gives us another chance to offer them help. And the reality of the situation is, with this population, you never know which one of those offers for help is going to be the one that they're going to accept. And so once we got past that, the people that are coming into our orbit, the first thing we do is screen them to see if there is a problem. And then we do an assessment to see how severe the problem is. And then once we determine that there is a problem and we understand what that problem is, we identify a provider in the community that specializes in responding to that level of need. And so we replace these people. And I say placement intentionally because we don't do referrals. We place these individuals into that setting. We make a phone call, see if there's a bed available, tell them we got a client, here's the profile that they fit, we're bringing them over, can you schedule an appointment? Then we drive them over. And the providers that we work with, they've all been vetted by us, so they know that these people are in our program. Our program happened to be 18 months long, 6 months of case management paired with 18 months of peer support. We want access to these people while they're in your care. That is the understanding from the beginning. If we think we need to see these people every day while they're in your care, we want the ability to do that. We won't mess with your treatment methodologies or your treatment plan, but we want access to these individuals so we can be involved in their lives as they go through this process. And once we place them, we do the case management, the 6 months of case management, the 18 months of peer support. And then as they move through that journey, we are constantly looking at, okay, what is the next step in that journey that they need to work on? But in short, and I'll fast forward a bit, what has resulted in this service model is now a service system. We call it a proactive comprehensive service system for serving people with substance use disorder, utilizing early points of intervention, targeting high utilizers of high cost services. And so now what we have, we started working just with law enforcement. Now we are working with the jail. We're working with diversion courts. We're working with adult probation. We're working with some selective emergency rooms, and we have our own street outreach team, all targeting this 9%. Because if you remember earlier, I talked about when I gave the profile of the population where these individuals were showing up at. These are the places that these individuals are showing up. So now we're engaging with these individuals to see if we can identify this population inside of their system so we can direct them into our care continuum. And so our care continuum looks like the following kind of providers. We have detox and treatment and residential recovery programs, transitional recovery programs, and then we deal with their other life and health issues that may be interfering with their ability to recover. Our goal is to reintegrate them back into the community in a safe and supportive recovery-friendly environment where they have the tools and the time and the support to be able to maintain their sobriety long-term. What we've learned from this is that sober centers are a very effective intervention for active substance users, that this is a costly population who can recover with the proper support and the proper services over time. And that care coordination and peer support is extremely, extremely important in the success at being able to address a population with these kinds of challenges.
Thank you so much, Leonard. You said so much there that was just key and critical. And in our experience of managing systems at Via Positiva and at other systems, one of the things we found was that almost every system or market is doing some form of case management. But the case management has become so transactional and has oftentimes put up so many hoops that are just impossible or very difficult for clients to jump through. You know, there's only a handful of evidence-based care management models. One of them is strength model care management that we use at Via Positiva and CBHI. But you've really developed, and I think sort of cracked the code on what are the characteristics of a care manager that actually can meet the relational and attachment needs of people in very early recovery and beyond. And I think one of the things I've seen with your organization is just how you've developed and trained the care managers to focus on relationality first and sort of be the glue that helps hold a very disparate and siloed system of services together. And I was wondering if you could share more about that, because I've not quite seen it at other organizations like I've seen it at Houston Recovery Center.
I learned pretty early in my career that engagement for the purpose of establishing trust is one of the most important steps you can take in working with this population. Because what I've seen is that oftentimes individuals that others have given up on, once they trust you, they would do things to please you that they wouldn't do for themselves. And the other thing that you want them to know is that when they fall, or should they fall or return to use, that they can contact this care provider with no shaming, no blaming concern, because we understand that that is a part of their journey of discovery. And so it's not a failure. It is a learning opportunity for them to realize that they put themselves in a situation that they may have thought that they could manage, that they found out that they couldn't. One of the reasons that people, when they return to use, stay active in their use for a long period of time is because they are ashamed to face the people that they think they let down. Okay, and so if you're going to establish at the very beginning that you cannot fail us, the only way you fail us is if you stop communicating with us. But as long as you're communicating with us, this is your recovery journey. It is yours to do. We are here to support you, and there is no failure. If you return to use, that is not what we would like to see happen. But if you return to use, then that is your opportunity to learn what you can manage and what you cannot.
Yeah, thank you so
And
much,
we
Leonard.
instill that from the very beginning. And one of the reasons, Jim, again, why I cannot overemphasize the value of peers is because this is not something that we have to convince them is the right methodology to employ, which is different from those of us who are not in recovery. I mean, those of us who may be well trained in behavioral health, who is passionate about our work, who is good at being able to facilitate a behavior change conversation, but cannot go that extra mile, which is I identify with your journey because I have traveled that journey myself. And so it just makes a world of difference in terms of establishing the authenticity of the relationship in terms of the foundation for trust.
Great. Thank you so much, Leonard. Before we open it up for questions here in just a moment, I wondered if you might like to, well, first of all, let me say one thing, is we're talking largely about public sector processes and experience that Houston Recovery Center has. My experience on the commercial side of companies that serve commercial insurance, that the process and the training of peers and strength model care management is almost exactly the same. The level of customer service, the level of training, and the characteristics of care managers, these days in terms of, value, as we move toward value-based reimbursement, really one of the very few levers that we have other than pharmacy to help bend the cost curve as well as the human capital curve in a positive way is through care management and care coordination. And so I just wanted to say that these principles that Leonard is talking about are almost directly transferable to commercial or hospital systems and the like. So just wanted to drop that in there. And Leonard, I guess before we start taking some questions, if there were one or two books that you would recommend all of us go get and read that you found valuable, what would be a couple of those books be? And we'll take your answer and then open it up to the questions that our guests have of you.
Jim, that's a very interesting question to pose. And the truth of the matter is, the books that are of interest to me at this point in my life are not the same books that have been important to me 10 years ago, or not the same books that have been important to me 15 years ago. But because of where I am in my life, I think that these books has tremendous value beyond the subject matter itself. Because these books is all about application. This is all, and which is where I am in my life now. It's about application. What is this information and how can I apply it? What is this information? And if this information has value to me, how can I apply it? And so the first one might surprise everybody because the title of the book is Mindfulness for Dummies. You may be, you may be, I see some smiles, so you may be familiar with the book. You may definitely be familiar with mindfulness. But this one is a very practical guide for introducing the subject matter and how to actually incorporate it into your life. You know, at the very elementary understanding of the term mindfulness, it's really all about focused attention. And so I think that we live, and I can speak for myself, I have lived most of my life without being terribly introspective, focused attention on what's going on inside of me. You know, most of my time is spent paying attention to what's going on outside of me. But there is tremendous value to be gained on understanding what's going on inside of me. What are my thoughts? What are my feelings? How do I respond to certain situations? What are the triggers? And the more I have understanding of that, the more it put me in control to manage that. And so the outcome of that is that I am more in control of myself in just about every situation that I'm in. And I just find that as elementary as it sounds, extremely powerful. And so the other one is, and it's on the same, it's basically on the same particular interest in terms of outcome and application. And it's a very small book and a very quick read. But the title of the book is The Golden Key by Emmett Fox. Many of you may be familiar with that book as well. But Emmett Fox is masterful in taking the teachings of the Bible and dumbing it down to the point that you can actually apply those principles that's offered in the Bible to your daily life. And it's the way Emmett makes it so plain and so simple to understand that if you're on a faith journey and you really want to grow in terms of your consciousness in that space, then this is an excellent guide as a place to start. And it's not overwhelming at all. It's in very plain, very simple language, but it is extremely powerful. The title again is The Golden Key by Emmett Fox. I think I'm saying that right.
Excellent books. Thank you so much, Leonard. And as we move to the question and answer portion of our discussion, I just want to highlight how you've really, talked about human practices today, about recovery practices, clinical practices, business practices, and we're ending with The Golden Key by Emmett Fox, which talks about spiritual practices. And so beautiful reflections from a truly honorable and beautiful elder. Thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Erickson, who will facilitate our any questions that you all might have. So Chris, if you could take it away.
We have questions.
All right.
We have many questions, of course. And I don't know if we have all the time in the world for them. And so I'm parsing them, Leonard. Some of them have been answered while you were speaking, but here's my first question for you from the group. The focus of the model at HRC is long-term care, not episodic care, right? We have that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Long-term care.
So that means that your focus of care is about relationships.
That's the foundation.
Yeah. So how do we get other payers to understand that? That's the question. How do other payers understand that it's about relationship, not episodes?
I think in speaking to payers, we really do have to speak to what their interest is. Mm-hmm. And their interest is the cost. And so if we can demonstrate to them that cost is related to outcomes, and outcomes is related to you meeting these individuals' needs completely. And so this engagement model allow us to be in these people's lives long enough to help them get stable so that they are not returning to use. So the value to the payer is that people in our care model, we can show you that we can reduce the return to use compared to individuals that's not in a care model like this. And I think that's provable.
So here's the next question. How do we get other jurisdictions to understand what you've done in Houston? Because we run a gamut. We run a gamut from they don't care or they have no knowledge to the importance of what you're doing, and how peers relate into that. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yes, the truth of the matter is these communities are paying for this already. Okay, they're just paying for it in an inefficient way because they got the money in systems that these individuals show up in, but is invisible to the general public. And basically, what that looks like is that I gave you the profile of the population that makes up that 10% of our visitors coming through the service center. And I showed you how expensive that population was and where the expenses show up at. The expenses show the real cost shows up in emergency transport and emergency room admissions. And the next costly area that this population show up is in the jails. And so if we're talking about stabilizing that population, that means we're reducing the number of times they're transported by the emergency transport system, the number of times that they're admitted to an emergency room, and the number of times they're entering jail. Then we're talking about offsetting some serious costs. And so what we want communities to consider is rather than spending it there, how about spending it on us? And you can follow up to see if we're reducing your costs in that area. We may not be reducing their costs in that area, but we will be reducing their cost per person in that area.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, here's another question. For a community hoping to replicate what you did, what you're doing with the Houston Recovery Center, who are the key individuals and entities in the community who have to come together to begin planning to make this a reality?
Well, I think starting with law enforcement is a really good place to start because they deal with large numbers. And this is a population that's problematic for any jail system or law enforcement officers. You can interview law enforcement officers and ask them how are they dealing with this population, and they'll tell you that they don't have a lot of resources that's available to assist them to respond to the needs that these individuals actually have, and they know that the jail is not the place that's best suited for these individuals.
So one of the things that you talked about early on, Leonard, was about peers and training them and how other people are taking the peers that you have trained into other places. So I mean, I wrote that down. It was just like really significant to me. So how do we help other jurisdictions, other systems, other places say you can do the same thing and train your own without like taking mine away? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense.
Okay.
But in this particular situation, Chris, we do not mind them taking them because it shows the peers the value of what they do, of what they have to offer. Now, let's just consider who we're talking about. These are individuals who came out of addiction and oftentimes present with the impression that they have no value. And then here they are being recognized that not only do you have value, but your value is so unique to the field that people are demanding you as a part of their care team. And so I celebrate it every time it happens, even though, I, uh, I'm disappointed in the loss, but I am not disappointed for the field and I'm not disappointed for that individual because they do have incredible value. I like to tell them that the life experience that you had um, paved the way for you to return to the community as a gift, not as a burden. It's just how you use it. And so that is evidenced by the fact that they are in high demand and are moving into markets that historically they have not been invited in, like the medical settings or treatment facilities that are pretty expensive treatment facilities now want to appear on that team. So yeah, no, it's, as far as I'm concerned, it advanced the field, and I'm okay with that. That's the price I'm willing to pay.
Thank you. I have two more questions. I hope we have enough time. Here's the next one. How did you achieve the cross-department agency collaborations necessary to achieve what you did with the Houston Recovery Center?
So I think, first of all, it starts with relationships, knowing all these players. But also, I think it's a pretty easy case to make because we improve their outcomes. Just as an example, if we're dealing with a treatment provider that specializes in detox, then when they finish their detox, they oftentimes discharge people to the street. And if they discharge them to the street, there's almost a guarantee that they're going to return to use. So if they discharge them from their care level, but they know that they're going to the next level of appropriate care, then it increases their outcomes in terms of this individual being able to stay clean and sober. And so it's not really a hard sale if you understand the continuum and you can explain the continuum to the people that you're talking to about what's necessary to give these individuals the very best chance of being able to stay clean and sober. And even if they return to use, giving them the best chance of not staying out there very long, but being able to return to the recovery work that they were doing before they slipped into the return to use.
Thank you, Leonard. Last question, and it goes way back to the beginning of this dialogue today. And it's my question. Because I also work with in education with young people, consult in that field. So who sought you out early? You mentioned a few people, but this is the real question. Why do you think they asked you, or why do you think they pinpointed you to be someone that they thought was a go-getter, a world record setter, whatever? Because I want to teach young educators to acknowledge people that they don't acknowledge many times. So that's my question. That's my question.
Yeah, I think that I probably presented with a great deal of self-confidence. And I think that was one of the gifts that I received from my early development years. I was given a lot of authority young. I was given a lot of space to explore young. And so I had the opportunity to kind of be, and I was the oldest child. And so, and my sister, which was 4 years younger than me, was a girl. And so it was me and the people that I cultivated relationships with, and the freedom that I had to just kind of explore. Because remember, I grew up in the country, I grew up on a farm. And so I spent a lot of time alone. and I got to be very comfortable with myself being alone. I got to be very comfortable solving problems. I got to be very comfortable taking on responsibility. And so that gave me a lot of self-confidence very early. And so, I mean, when I became, president of the Forge Club at the 9th grade, I had no reservations about whether or not I could do that. And then, then that led from one assignment of responsibility to another. And when I got to college, it just happened. And it was natural for me. It was not like something that I had to kind of adjust to. It was just natural. But I think it was natural because of all of that experience I had very early in my life. Even the period of time that I was alone, I think was very formidable in terms of the very foundation of who I turned out to be. Being a person that was very comfortable in my skin in just about every situation I find myself.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I've not been.
But I
to your
will say
skin.
this.
Okay.
I will say this. I don't think you can teach that, but I do think you can encourage it. One of the things that we don't do a good job of is recognizing and celebrating success early, or even manufacturing situations where you set kids up to be successful at something. The more times you have an opportunity to be successful at something, and then you are praised for it, the more it invests in your own self-confidence bank. And then that itself is something that can be self-perpetuating for the individual as they grow. But you have to, in some instances, you have to kind of orchestrate the environment where that can be experienced, which I think is perfectly okay. I think we could do a much better job at that than we are doing. And I think the sooner we can do it, the better the people that experience that will be. Put them through laboratories where they get a chance to do things that they can succeed at, and then give them recognition for succeeding, and then run them through it again.
Yep, totally agree with you. And I'm totally thinking now, because you've got me going off this direction, is how do we help our young parents? How do we help our young parents put that into place? Because
gosh, yes.
that's where that came from, right?
Yeah.
That's where that came from. So I would like to thank you, Leonard, Jim, thank you too, and all of you who have been with us. What a beautiful session. And we'll see you all next month, September 12th, Christian de la Puerta, for our next Elders episode. Dialogue. Thank you all.
Thank you for